Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. We will move on to recognitions and presentations. And I see is a Linda Ferguson here. All right, excellent. We have a declaration for Constitution Week. So Linda, if you will come on up here. Do you like speaking in public?
Not so much.
Okay, then I'm going to read the proclamation here. The City of Clayton declares September 17th through the 23rd, 2018 as Constitution Week. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to the rule of law. And whereas September 17, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the framing of the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, this says Keith Hayden, Mayor, on behalf of the Clayton City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week in the city of Clayton, California, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed us through this guardian of our liberties. And Linda, if you want to say a few words as to this, that would be great.
Thank you very much. I'm Linda Ferguson, and I'm with the Daughters of the American Revolution and Laux chapter. We meet in Martinez, and our membership is about 150 in this group. So I really appreciate this, and it's excellent that you're doing this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Our next proclamation is for Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and indication is no one's here. Is there anyone here to accept that? No. Then I will abbreviate what it says. The City of Clayton declares September 2018 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And basically, whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and according to the CDC, each year more than 41,000 people die by suicide. And suicide is the 10th leading cause of death among adults in the U.S. and second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 24. Whereas Clayton, California is no different than any other community in the country. And whereas local organizations like the Suicide Prevention Services and national organizations like the National Alliance on Mental Illness are on the front lines of the battle that many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain too taboo a topic to speak on. And whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. Therefore, Keith Hayden, Mayor, on behalf of the Clayton City Council, does hereby proclaim September 2018 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in Clayton, and encourage all residents to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, their friends, their neighbors over the next few days, and to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they seem appropriate. A simple phone call, message, handshake, or hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. All right, then we will move on to a presentation by Republic Services, which is our city's franchise and solid waste recycling, collection, and disposal company, regarding current trends in community recycling efforts, coupled with the upcoming state mandates for new recycling programs and the global problems with post-recycling in the secondary markets. And we have Susan Hurl, who is the Division Municipal Services Manager for Republic.
That was a lot.
It was.
And before she starts, if I can, Mr. Mayor, I just want to let the public know that this was an item that the council had requested during your goal-setting session back in January 30th to be brought forward. The presentation this evening by Susan Hurl, representing Republic Services, will go over a variety of things, including the community recycling efforts, your upcoming state mandates for recycling, and the global problems and the post-recycling secondary markets. We provided background materials in your staff memo, and my role is your assistant to the city manager. I also serve as your recycling and waste reduction program manager, and I ensure that the city meets its state-mandated recycling program implementation and compliance monitoring and reporting requirements. And Susan's here to give you the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Susan Hurl. I do work for Republic Services, and with me tonight is my general manager, Art Mejia. We are the solid waste and recycling provider for the city of Clayton. Our name has been Allied Waste. Our name has been BFI. And I have been here through all of those. So I have been with the city for a long time now. So tonight I'm going to talk about everything solid waste recycling and the future, which is coming, which is organic. So we're going to talk about diversion rates, per capita disposal, Clayton commercial, what's coming, and what's going on with the recycling markets right now. So it all started back in 1989 with the Integrated Waste Management Act, which started the first requirement for cities to have an absolute specified diversion rate. In 1995, you were required to have 25%. 2000, it was 50%. And you were required to make a good faith effort. If you did not make it what the state or Cal Recycle deemed to be a good faith effort, you could be fined up to $10,000 per day. And the state wasn't kidding. They did fine some cities for not making that good faith effort. They fined the city of Cerritos $82,000, city of Gardenia $7,000, city of Santa Fe $43,000, Mariposa County $21,000, and the city of McFarland $11,000. So they wanted to make sure that everyone took what they were doing very seriously. So how did Clayton do? Clayton did great, and you can see back in 1995 when we first started, you had an 18% diversion rate, and back down to 2006, you had a 49%. And on the biannual review status, what that means is all reports, there's an annual report that has to be filed by the city every year, and Laura is the person that does that. I help her out when she needs it. That report then goes to the Cal Recycle Board of Directors. That report has to be approved by the board. Once it is approved, the action taken is put on the Cal Recycle website so you can see how the city has done. And even when the city was under the 50%, you did have a good faith effort, and it's primarily because good faith effort in Cal Recycle's eyes is programs, 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 and more programs. Now, in 2007, the state decided that it was too hard to calculate the diversion rate. It was too hard to explain how it was calculated. So they decided to switch it to per capita disposal. Per capita disposal is only based on disposal and population. The goals of AB 939 are still relevant. The per capita disposal target rate is the 50% diversion rate, and I'll show you that in a minute. And there's an annual compliance evaluation, the same as what you just saw on that chart. How you do every year achieving your per capita target, which is determined by Cal Recycle, is also published. How did Clayton do? You did great. You did absolutely great. Starting in 2007 at the bottom up to 2016, the only two columns that really are important are where the two red arrows are. So the first arrow that's right next to the year is the pounds per person per day. That is what Cal Recycle has determined you can have in the city of Clayton. That is your target. It's called a PPD. They take your disposal and your population and they determine how much pounds per person per day you are actually making. So in 2007, you were at 3.7, pretty close to that 4.1, because that 4.1 is 50% diversion. So you always want to be under that 50% because that means your diversion is creeping up. What you don't want to be is over that number. So now in 2016, Clayton has dropped to 2.9 pounds per person, which is great. From where you've been to where you've come, you've done a great job. I can thank all the residents and the businesses here for doing that. And I go back to programs, and more programs. So this is kind of just a visual that you get. The dark line is basically the disposal tons. The red line is population, which means you're trending in the right way, where even when your population goes up, your disposal is not creeping up with it. I mean, every now and then we see a spike in disposal, and there was a year when across the state, residential garbage had gone off the roof. It's sort of gotten back under control now. But so far, Clayton's done a great job of complying with AB 939, which is no easy task. So, now that you've complied with that, the state has decided it's time to move on to other things. But one thing I wanted to talk about is I give the city a monthly report on the tons that we collect. What CalRecycle's numbers, and CalRecycle's numbers are the ones that your diversion is based on, not mine, because these numbers are only what my company touches. The CalRecycle numbers also include self-haul, contractors that may take things into other disposal sites that I know nothing about. But you can tell just from the raw numbers that we collect. In 2007, residential was at 58%. You've dipped, you've gotten well, and you're back up in July. You're trending great. You're at 53% diversion for residential. Commercial is always up and down, and that's primarily due to your large industrial customers like Oakhurst and Safeway. You never know, and when you're doing some home improvement projects that you can't haul away as C&D, those numbers fluctuate more than anything. So for Clayton Residential, we wanted, did I do something? Oh, okay. We wanted to see if we could get people to move out of those 64 and 96 gallon carts, which has been a challenge in Clayton. So in 2003, which is I use as a benchmark, you can see where the city was. We did some outreach over the years, changed the rate structure to make those carts a little more expensive. And then in 2017, we did a residential newsletter about downsizing. We did a postcard specifically about downsizing to 64 and 96 gallon customers. And we have finally seen some pretty good movement out of those 64 and 96 gallon carts. And everyone's heading to the 32, which is really where you want most of the city to be. For commercial, it's always a little tricky in Clayton because there's so little of commercial. So the state in 2011 enacted a law that said that every commercial business that made 4 yards or more of garbage had to have a mandatory recycling program. So the city adopted an ordinance, we implemented it. You have, I'll tell you, so everyone asks me this, how many businesses? You have 2 multifamily complexes that fall into the AB 341 category and 16 commercial. And I'm here to tell you that they are all in compliance. They all have a recycling program, and that's important because under the monitoring, compliance, and reporting, we are required, or I should say, Laura is required to report to the city how many businesses fall under this law, how many have achieved its goals. If there are some that have slipped, what are we doing to comply? And we have to report those to CalRecycle. In addition, we have to send those customers and all commercial customers notification every year that this is the law, that they are expected to follow it, and that we will be notifying them every year. The diversion rate for commercial is challenging in Clayton. I mean, we can look at large customers, and when I talk about large customers, I think about Oakhurst, because that's probably the most prevalent one here. They do a lot of green waste. They do a lot of recycling. We can probably always do better. We have done here site visits and waste audits. I have a recycling coordinator that comes out here. She looks in the trash. She looks in the recycling to see if there is any material that could be moved out of the trash into the recycling, if there's any contamination in the recycling. And then she lets the customer know if there's a way they could do a better job. In addition, she goes out before garbage day to see how full someone's garbage container is, to possibly see if we can help that customer downsize their garbage cart or downsize their front load container and use their recycling. Because what happens is people get used to the service level and they don't want to change. There's some security about having a large bin, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe someone can explain that to me, but they don't want to let it go. So if we talk about money, usually they're more inclined to do something. The next thing that's coming, and another way to get diversion, is from organics. And I put up just a few of Clayton's customers, and if you look at a number of them, if not most, they all produce food waste. And that will be the next program. That will be one way to move the needle on commercial recycling, is to adopt a commercial organics program, which will also take site visits and education. We did a commercial recycling newsletter as well to talk about commercial recycling and the benefits of it. And we've been pretty successful of having just about every business in Clayton have a program. So, what's coming? Just remember, I'm the messenger. So in 2014, and Councilmember Pierce probably knows all about AB 332, because that is the bill that wants California to do what it can to affect climate change, because that's where all the rest of these programs are coming out of. So, State of California, AB 1826 said, as of April 2016, businesses that generate 8 cubic yards of organic waste must have an organics program. In 2017, they lowered that to 4 cubic yards. In 2019, they changed that to 4 cubic yards of solid waste. Multifamily has to have an organics program, but they don't have to include food. And if a 50% reduction in organic waste is not met, the state may consider lowering that to 2 cubic yards of solid waste. So in the first category for April 2016, Clayton had 0 businesses that fell into that category. Between myself and Laura, we had to calculate for the state every business and where they fell into all these categories. In 2017, there was only one. It was a large one. It was Clayton Station. However, we met with Cal Recycle and talked to them and said, for efficiency purposes, it makes the most sense that when Clayton did or decided to do a residential organics program, that's the time they should do a commercial one, because we can then use the residential truck to pick up the handful of customers that would be part of the commercial organics program, because there aren't enough commercial organics customers out here for a route. Cal Recycle thought that was a reasonable request and granted it. That's part of the other reason that I'm here. So what is organics? Because that seems to get tossed around. Organics is food waste, green waste, landscape pruning, non-hazardous wood, and food soil paper. And then I just did a brief definition of food waste. It's pretty the standard. Food soil paper, it's pretty standard. The only thing about the food soil paper is that we're really cautious about education, because we tend to get a lot of non-compostable paper and items in compost that people have good intentions that think it's compostable, but it's not. The one thing that I do want to point out is in the definition of organics, where it says non-hazardous wood waste, that includes pallets. So I'm going to give you an example, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but let's just say CVS. CVS may not generate any food waste. However, if CVS has pallets, they fall under this definition of organics and must have a program to take care of those pallets under the mandatory commercial organics program that the state has enacted. The same would go for Oakhurst. They will have to have a program for their pallets. So another law in 2014 had to do with the use of alternative daily cover. Alternative daily cover is when we used green waste to cover garbage at our landfill every night. We are required every night to cover the garbage. We have been doing that for years. It has been considered by Cal Recycle a beneficial reuse. State of California has now decided that they don't want the green waste covering the garbage anymore, that they want it to all be composted. So the city has basically 2 choices. You can either decide to compost all your green waste, or you can allow the green waste to continue to be used as alternative daily cover at our landfill, but it will be disposal, which means, and that's about 2,000 tons a year, which means that would probably kick your per pounds per person up quite a bit, and you'd be way over your 50%. So those are your choices. Yeah, you might not meet the per capita if you keep it as disposal. Now we come into the latest and the greatest, and this one is SB 1383, short-lived climate pollutants, organic waste methane emissions reductions, and this all has to do with the state of California trying to impact climate change. So they believe that greenhouse gas emissions from the decomposition of organics in landfill contribute to global climate change. So the state will require 50% reduction in the level of statewide disposal of organic waste from 2014 level by 2020. The important thing to remember about this one is that these are all statewide goals. These are not jurisdiction-specific goals, so they don't expect Clayton to do 50% diversion. This has to do with the statewide. They will, which is why they track all our numbers, because they're collectively going to figure out if the state has met those numbers. So in 2025, they want a 75% reduction, and then they're going to require a 20% statewide improvement in edible food recovery by 2025. And edible food recovery is pretty much like it sounds, except there's two tiers of customers. I don't think there's any in Clayton that fall into those categories, except maybe a Safeway. But you do have requirements to send out information, to post stuff on your website. I mean, luckily here in Contra Costa County, we have White Pony Express that provides this service already, and it doesn't prohibit businesses who may have a product that they want to put into this of participating. It's just that there are some that will be absolutely required to participate. And all the reporting has to be done to CalRecycle as well. So this is what the future compliance requirements are, that every city must have residential and commercial organics collection programs. The state is going to standardize the color of containers by 2032. They're looking at, and this is for every city in the state of California, your black will be trash, blue will be recycled, green will be organics. The reason behind that is that if you move from city to city, you won't have to figure out what the garbage and recycling is. I don't think it's hard to figure it out, even if you got different colors, but that's just me. They're also going to standardize the container labels, which means that every city in the state of California is going to have the same labels on their containers. Yeah, we have to do it 2022 for new residential and commercial containers and 2025 for existing containers. And the reason that they're spreading out those years is because we buy containers all the time. And so those containers depreciate over a lifespan of 8 to 10 years. So they've given us a little leeway so at some point we can stop buying the old containers. I don't know yet if they're going to require us in the meantime putting stickers on all the old carts. And let me just say that the state has not finalized the regulations. These are still all in process. They'll finalize all the regs by the end of this year, I'm told. The edible food recovery program, I talked to you about that already. Outreach, quarterly inspection, contamination enforcement, and reporting. The state is going to expect that there will be quarterly audits of organics containers to make sure there are no contaminants in them. They have expectations that cities will adopt significant enforcement ordinances. And they give some examples in some literature, and they will expect that all those audits will be documented and reported. There's a whole lot more reporting that's required in all these new programs. The other one, and the last one, is the state's going to expect a program to collect textiles. And textiles defined by the state is anything made of thread, yarn, fabric, or cloth. It's not mattresses or furniture or anything like that. We don't know what kind of program they're expecting. We don't know how they expect us to do this. And, it's a challenge finding nonprofits that will take a lot of stuff these days. So this one's going to be pretty challenging. I think some cities are looking at another cart. I'm not quite sure how a truck would pick that up, but anyway. So if we didn't have enough coming from the state of California, we now have the impacts of China's actions on the recycling markets. And so China decided to clean up their own environment, which is not to be, which is to be expected. And they've changed the acceptable contamination levels of material from around 3% to 0.5%, which is extremely, extremely, extremely clean, which has caused problematics. Part of the problem is lightweighting of material, and I just use plastic bottles as an example because I think people can really understand this. Everything's gotten lighter, and it's gotten lighter, and we're collecting more of it now. So we've got a whole lot more material for stuff that used to take us, we not have to collect as much. So in 2000, 48,000 plastic bottles, the water bottles you buy at the store, took 48,000 to make a ton. Now it takes 92,000 plastic bottles to make a ton. So I think if you feel how flimsy they are now, you can tell the lightweighting of the material. So we've had a decrease in commodity sales. We've had lightweighting. We've had contamination, disposal costs and residual. So you can tell, and it's been all over the news, that we're getting less for everything, and markets have totally frozen up in a number of places. I can tell you that the contamination out in Clayton is not very bad. I can't remember what it is, but it's pretty good, because I think some of the contamination that happens are with good intentions. I don't think it's a lot of people, having a 20-gallon cart, not want to pay for a 32 and shoving the extra garbage in their recycling cart. I think it's people that have good intentions that sometimes make a mistake. So in terms of prices, just to give you an idea, the national average for mixed paper in 2016 was $75 a ton. It's now dropped to $5. And in some cases, I think the last few months, we're at a negative number overall. Because if you remember, we started off with recycling with the tubs. You separated everything, right? Then we went to the cart to make it easier so we could get more volume. Well, we're now a product of our own success, because now we have everything's mixed. Some communities are deciding to go back to split carts. So you get plastics and paper on one side. There's no real secret as to what the future is going to hold at this point. So one of the downsides of what's happened with China is that small recyclers can't stay in business anymore. We used to take Clayton's recycling to a small recycling facility in Benicia called Pacific Rim Recycling. Unfortunately, because they were small, they couldn't afford the additional equipment, they couldn't afford the additional manpower, so they closed their doors at the beginning of this year. So now your material goes to Newbie Island Resource and Recovery. It's our facility in San Jose. That is an actual picture of the facility. It's one of the largest in the country. It's an amazing place. If anyone would ever like a tour, I can certainly set you up with one. You can see all the different sort lines. This is going to date me, but it reminds me of the game Mousetrap, because it has all these different levels and everything. So the impacts of the China sword are that we've had to slow the speeds down on the processing lines to be able to pull out any contaminants. We've had to add additional people to the sort lines to help pull out all the contaminants and keep the good stuff in. We've also decided to hire more people to do more self-inspections, because there's nothing worse than having, containers of material get over to China and have it be rejected because their inspectors believe that it's contaminated. We are actively exploring other markets. We've been sending stuff to Malaysia, to Indonesia, to Vietnam, I think a little to India. But as my company is doing it, so is every other company in the United States and Europe. I mean, if you ever wondered if this was a global market, you can tell from this that this is definitely a global market. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen. We're just kind of sitting and waiting. I think China just recently imposed a tariff, a 25% tariff, in retaliation for the tariffs that we imposed on them. So, we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But the one thing, because CalRecycle is trying to figure out how to create domestic markets for all this material now, is that they will consider market conditions when evaluating the city's compliance with AB 939, AB 341, AB 1826, and SB 1383, because they still expect you to implement programs to be in compliance with all those laws. And on that, I know that was a lot. Be happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions up here?
I have.
I have several.
I have two questions. So it looks like in Clayton, I think you mentioned 44% of Clayton residents currently have the 32-gallon container, 7% have 20-gallon container, but that still leaves, I think, 49% with a 64 or 96-gallon container. So I'm wondering, sort of, what's the biggest incentive or trigger for people to switch into a smaller container? Is it the rate? Is it just advertising and awareness, or?
I think it's a combination of people being aware. I mean, there is a good price difference between the 32 and the 64. I mean, I think it's $12 or $13. I had a friend who lived here who would not get rid of their 96, and I said, why are you, and they only produce 32 gallons worth of garbage. They wanted it for special occasions. That's why people hang on to the carts. And my response was, use your cleanup. That's what cleanups are for. Don't spend the extra $13 a month when you can get a free cleanup that's part of your service. I mean, I don't know that you could do any more price difference. Now, there's not very much difference between your 64 and your 96. I mean, I think it's about, I don't know, in the high 40s. I can tell you the city of Martinez, their 96-gallon rate, it's got to be over $80 now. $80 a month. Because they don't want anybody in that cart.
A month or 2
A month. $80 a month for a 96 in the city of Martinez. And I don't think they're the lowest.
Okay. Then my other question is sort of regarding the way in which we recycle. So my family actually lived in Europe for a couple of years recently. So before we left Clayton, I think we had a 64-gallon container. When we went to Europe, I think we had a 32-gallon container that was emptied twice a month, not every week. And then when we came back here, I think we went to the 32-gallon. But I think in a lot of European countries, I definitely saw that where, you recycle a whole lot more. I mean, you have to take, so here I think we only have the 3 containers and that's sort of it. So I'm wondering, do you have in other communities near us, more varied type of recycling beyond just those 3? I mean, doing more residential organic recycling, for example.
Well, for just plain recycling, you can get an additional recycling cart in Clayton at no additional charge. I mean, so if you're a big recycler and want to do that, you can do that.
Or bigger.
Bigger.
You get the 96.
Bigger. Get the 96, right. Get the 96.
At no extra charge.
At no extra charge.
And you could do like food waste and stuff like that.
That would be a new program.
Okay.
Because right now your material goes as alternative to daily cover. You can't put food waste into green waste and have it cover a landfill. It's against our permit.
Do you do that in other communities at all, or is that?
Compost?
Right.
Oh, everyone's getting on board because they have to. Pleasant Hill composts now, Martinez composts, Orinda, Moraga, Danville, Lafayette, Walnut Creek, they all compost. Everyone's getting on board to meet the new state laws.
Okay.
Some are more excited about it than others, about putting food waste in their green waste. I mean, there seems to be some hesitation by customers because they'd still rather flush it down the garbage disposal. And, it's a change of habit. I mean, I didn't like it at first where I live, but I got the little pail, it sits on my counter. I figured out how to keep it clean. It doesn't smell. But it is a lifestyle change.
No, I think it's a habit. And like I said, I lived in a country for a number of years
It's the way of
without
life there.
garbage
Yeah,
disposal.
it
so-
is. It
Anyway,
is.
go ahead.
All right. Jim, you got a question?
Just a couple of points for clarification, Susan. Diversion just means getting rid of the trash. Is that right? Is that what diversion means? Getting rid of things?
Diversion has to do with sending something someplace else that's not a landfill.
Okay, but right now what you do is we have 3 containers. Each one of those is segregated and you weigh it separately?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The way that it's weighed is when the truck comes in.
Yeah.
They weigh it on
I know
the
that
scale.
there's a
Okay.
different vehicle that
Yes.
picks up each one of them now.
Yes. Yes.
And then they're taken someplace and then they're weighed?
Yes. The trucks are weighed. The trucks go to our transfer station because right now the recycled material goes to the transfer station where it's loaded into a long transfer trailer. So the truck comes in, it gets weighed, and there's a tare weight in the scale that knows how much that truck empty weighs. And then from that, we get the weight of the truck.
I got
yeah.
that.
And the same with the green waste.
Okay, but the picking up of all the trash and the recyclables, how does your firm is the one that measures and weighs it, correct? That's what goes into the calculation.
My numbers. My numbers.
The numbers that were being measured.
Well, the way that, and that's actually changing too, because the way that it worked before is that the disposal facilities like Keller Canyon, because all Cal Recycle cares about is garbage. So they don't look for recycling numbers anywhere. They look for the green waste and alternative daily cover because they're looking to move that out. So the numbers go from our facility to the county. The county then submits the numbers as a whole to the state for all the cities, cities in Contra Costa County. However, by a new state law, disposal facilities like Keller Canyon are going to report directly to Cal Recycle and bypass the county.
Okay, but each vehicle that picks up the waste in Clayton, when it gets to wherever it goes, they know that it came from here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that it doesn't get mixed in with Pleasant Hill and that, so that the numbers are
no,
not accurate.
And if we were to have a truck breakdown and we had to bring a truck from Pleasant Hill up here, we do an allocation. So we know how much that truck picked up, that truck is weighed, and then we know from there on out that material's Clayton, if in emergencies.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Susan. That's very informative, and that's exactly what we were looking for. I know on the council we've worked hard with your company over the years to get those things implemented, and probably you've seen from mayor's columns like mine and Julie's that we really just want your brown can bigger than your blue. Right. Although I guess in 2032 it'll have to be blue bigger than black.
It'll be some.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. All right, we will move on to our reports, and we have a planning commission. We have our chair, Bassam Altwall, will be here to give us his report. Welcome.
Good evening, Vice Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good evening, staff. On the 28th of August, we met for a planning commission. All 5 commissioners were present, and we had only one item on the agenda. It was a parcel map division for 500 Douglas Road, which is a parcel, triangle-shaped parcel over Oak Court, overlooking Oak Court, and there was a presentation by the staff, and neighbors had some concerns, but were not opposing, and other neighbors were in approval of the parcel map. The parcel map, the parcel it is was a PD, planned development, and it was suggested to move to R15, which is a transition between an area close to it, which is R12, to an area which is R40. And after debate, and some of the commissioner members had some concerns for future development of the R15, but what was in front of us was the parcel map division, and with a vote of 5-0, we approved the division from a parcel. It was 1.49, around 1.5 acres, to 3 parcels that fits within the R15 category. That was the only item, and that ends it for my report.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, Trails and Landscaping did not have a meeting, so there's no report. City Manager, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. No report tonight.
All right, that'll bring us up to City Council. We'll start with Jim.
Thank you. Had a few things happen between the last council meeting. One, we had second to the last car show. We have the final car show tomorrow night. We've been getting a full house at each event, and lots of good-looking vehicles that have been restored, and great music played throughout the event. On the 24th, myself and another representative from another city went to the charter high school and attended the meet and greet barbecue with the new executive director, Jim Scheibel. Jim is out making the rounds. He's only been here about 2 to 3 weeks, and he is out really making some positive impact on the charter high school. In fact, he was even up at the Clayton Business and Community Association meeting later that month, or later last August as well. Let's see, on the 27th, I played in the Cops for Kids 20th annual golf tournament. They're a nonprofit association here in Contra Costa County, made up primarily of law enforcement entities throughout the county, and they provide programs to directed at children who potentially could go the wrong way, and they try to help them with various activities that keep them interested and motivated in the right direction. Attended the CBCA general membership meeting, which was very informative, and then finally on last Saturday we had a concert as well as the derby by the sponsored by the Clayton Community Church.
All right, Julie?
Yes, the only thing this last 2 weeks that I was able to attend was the concert in the Grove this last Saturday, where we had the second largest collection of the year. And so things look good for planning the concerts for next season, because the coffers are getting full. So that's looking real good.
Excellent. Julia?
No activity to report, but I do want to mention that Oktoberfest is coming up on October 6th and 7th, and we are still looking for volunteers. The shifts are 3 hours each. There's 3 shifts on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and these kind of events cannot take place unless we get a couple hundred volunteers. So it's really easy to sign up. Just go to the claytoncpca.org website and sign up for a shift.
Okay.
On the city website, they have 2 dates listed. September 29th and 30th, and also October 6th and 7th. So somebody might want to look at correcting that.
Well, Rory, that wasn't really a question. That was a statement. But but we will definitely endeavor to make sure that we have that right on our city website.
October 6th and 7th is the correct date.
Thank you for pointing that out. All right. This last Saturday, I had the honor to MC the 15th annual Labor Day Derby put on by the Clayton Community Church. This is just a wonderful event that they've been hosting. I've only missed 1 year. This year, Pastor Robinson missed. He's on sabbatical, but it was his idea, and he and I have worked in that. We did as assistant pastor this year, but it's a great opportunity for all the kids in the community to come down, the families. They put on a great event with all sorts of food and stuff, and it's just a really great event. It's just kind of one of those small town Clayton charm events, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. All right, with that, we will move to introduction of our city council candidates who are present at the meeting, and I see Brian is present. Brian, if you'd like to come up.
I went first last time.
All right, let's go with Jeff. By popular acclaim, you're first. Or by direction.
Hello. I spoke last time, but for those who weren't in attendance, my name is Jeff Wan. I am an active CPA working in private industry. I'm the treasurer of my small HOA. I'm an East Bay native, and I've been a Clayton resident for the past 9 years. My wife and I came to Clayton to raise our young kids. We were attracted to the city for the small town feel and as a safe place for kids to grow up. I'm running for city council to preserve the character and charm of the city with things like concerts in the park and Oktoberfest and 4th of July parades. I'm running to keep Clayton a safe and wonderful place to raise a family. I have 3 kids in the public school system who have been active in community sports, from swim team to soccer to basketball. I was motivated to run for city council after years of reading about our downtown misadventures. I'm running for city council because at some point, I believe the council has lost its way from the push for high-density housing, selling off city assets, parolee housing, and acting with a lack of transparency. The council stopped listening to the people that it represents. As a member of the council, it would be my privilege to represent my neighbors and community in keeping Clayton a great place to live and raise a family in. I think we can do better, and it's time for a change. Thank you.
All right, Brian.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Shuey. For those of you who don't know me, and for those of you who don't know, I've got to face this way. they make me. My name is Brian Bedell, and I'm running for City Council for one of the 2 seats that are open. I'm running, despite not having as many volunteer hours as Mr. Shuey, because I believe a change is necessary. Like Jeff said, over the past year and a half to 2 years, the council has lost its way. It has shown a lack of communication with the public. It has shown a deaf ear to the public. It has shown a direction that does not fit with what is traditionally Clayton. I can't claim to say that I've lived here a long time. I've lived here 3 years, but I have had friends who've lived here for decades, in fact, going back to the early 90s. So I'm quite familiar with Clayton. And in fact, that's why I moved here, because it's such a great place. So some people say, well, you know, he's this new guy coming in to change things. I'm not changing anything. I didn't move here to change things. I moved here to keep them the way they are. But the problem is there have been things that have been going on that aren't keeping them the way they are. And that's what I want to remedy. As a councilman, I will provide open communication in both directions. You will know if there's an important issue. You're not going to have to read about it on Nextdoor. You're not going to have to read about it in the Clayton Pioneer. You're not going to have to find out about it from your friends. I advocate an email newsletter that goes out to anyone who wants it, and I'll maintain a Facebook page which will post, to the extent possible, any important issue that might concern the citizens of Clayton. Basically, what it comes down to is I'm going to serve the role that the council members should. I'm not a big writing prepared guy. I usually speak off the cuff, but I do want to read one thing that I did find that I think is pretty relevant. It reads as follows. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. This city council has not followed that. That's the Brown Act, something that's been cited often by them, but they simply don't follow. I will. One thing I will absolutely guarantee is, as a councilman, you will have my ear. As a councilman, you will have my voice. As a councilman, I will have your back.
CW, the other, Carl Wolf is not here. I understand he's wrapping up his retirement. He's finishing up all his details with work, so he is not here. That leaves me. I've been involved in Clayton City politics for 20 years and helping to steward this city and make it the city that attracted Mr. Juan and Mr. Bedell. I have faithfully executed those duties. I have listened to the public. I have made the decisions that were correct for the city as a whole, not a vocal minority, okay? It is important that we have people that listen, that carefully consider all facets of the risks and the benefits of actions. And over the years, I have been one of those who have fought when we should and could fight the state and the county over mandates that come down. And I've also been the one that has said, hey, we need to pull back and we need to make as much lemonade out of the lemons they're giving us because it's not a fight we can win. That's important in a council member, and I hold that, and I've done that. For those of you that don't know, I go by Shu. I have a wife and 5 children. 3 of them are adopted, 2 from China, 1 from Ukraine. I have been a volunteer for youth sports for almost 2 decades as a coach and a leader. I was on the Community Services Committee and I was the chair of the Downtown Grove Park Design Committee. I've been on the City Council for 16 years. and I hope that you will reelect me for another term, and I will faithfully serve you as I have done to date. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to item 6, public comment. For those of you that don't know, public comment at this point is on those items that are not on the agenda. I know a lot of you are here on item 8A, which is coming up. For those of you that are not here for that, we have a couple of speaker cards, and I am pleased to invite Abram Wilson up to the mic. I've known Abram for quite a while through our League of Cities, and he is here to speak to the city. Go ahead, Abram.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, Council, residents, and staff. I'm H. Abram Wilson, candidate for Contra Costa College Board. My wife and I have lived and been residents of Contra Costa County for over 40 years. We raised our 2 children, and we have 5 grandchildren. Education has always been an important part of my life. Both of my parents are educators, one a high school English teacher, the other taught math at the community college in Philadelphia. If given the honor to serve, I will strive to improve the educational opportunities of the students at Contra Costa Community College. Some of the areas that I will focus on are vocational opportunities, closer relationship with the business community, continue to support my new program that I'm fortunate to be and privileged to be involved in community college. That's a veterans small business management. It's called boot camp. And what we're focusing on veterans, because the majority of the veterans come and form small businesses. We're also putting special emphasis on women veterans and really focus on making sure that there's childcare when they come, to give them an opportunity to come. I'm really excited about that, and that should start soon. As I go around and talk to students in the community college, the main thing they're concerned about, counselors. Basic things at the very beginning, understand why they're there and how they can matriculate through the college. Also, academic advisors. Also, I'm looking to protect and enhance the funds for education. We're always seeing them somehow compromised and taken away, whether it's in middle school or secondary or the college. I plan to work with the staff to improve the staff's relationship with the students, to make sure the staff is taken care of, because just like anyone else, if you don't take care of the professors, that goes into the students also. My civic and community experience, I'm a U.S. veteran, Army veteran. I'm a former member of the Contra Costa Community College Foundation. I've received many awards, the California High School Partnership Award, Local High School Award for my commitment to education. This is what I'm really proud of. The State Music Educators Legislator of the Year Award. It was the first time it's ever been given to someone outside of Sacramento. It's my commitment to the music programs in the schools. Honorary PTA Award from the state of California. I have been a Parks Commissioner in the city of San Ramon for 10 years. Okay, thank you. I was honored to be the first elected mayor of the city of San Ramon, serving 9 years. I was chair of the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference. I am a Paul Harris Rotarian, and I've developed many programs, public-private partnerships with the San Ramon Unified School District. I am equally proud of a co-founder of the East Bay Communication System. And what that is...
Abram, I'm going to have to cut you off pretty quick here. We've got a lot of people here, so
okay.
Cut to the chase, if you
All
will.
right. That was the system. You had police and fire arguing back and forth. They could not communicate. I said, enough is enough. I went to D.C., brought home $3 million, and we formed now the East Bay Communication System. That, I am the champion of that. I will bring that same personal commitment to the college. I would appreciate your support and endorsement. And I hope, again, that you will choose me. I believe I am most qualified to take this role to serve you and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have Peter Cloven.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, City Council. My name is Peter Cloven. I live at 739 Black Point Place, and I've been a resident of Clayton for 12 years. I'm also on the City Planning Commission. And I've been watching this serious turmoil on social media for several weeks now. 5 years ago, in 2014, I was a resident. I received a postcard to our house about a development across the creek called Silver Oak. If those of you who don't know, it's on the other side of Lydia Lane and Mitchell Creek. On the other side, from Yolanda Circle, it's that big parcel. It was looking at large, high-density, three-story townhouse-style development with low-income housing element. My backyard faced that, and I was angry. I was furious. And with a group of people in the neighborhood, I got a geotechnical engineer, a hydrologist. I'm an environmental engineer myself. We fought the environmental impact statement that was put together by the city's environmental company they hired on behalf of the developer. So as a result of that, I came to the Planning Commission. Tuya and Keith were actually on the Planning Commission at that time. And I saw the way they listened to our thoughtful statements, and I saw what happened as a result of a reaction, those actions. And it still hasn't come to fruition. Something will happen someday, but I want to get involved. But I realized at the time that I thought you all were basically old-time cronies sitting in a back room of the CBCA, making backroom deals and bringing through things to the public. And I was these guys. When I look at next door and look at the misinformation and look at the stuff that's being said about you all, I said it. I said it 4 years ago when I was opposing you all. And here I am today after a year and a half in the Planning Commission. I've not been paid hardly anything. We get about $125 a month to do what we do, and we spend hours going through everything that's put in front of us. There was an interview process where I was asked a lot of questions about why I wanted to be on the Planning Commission. I wanted to keep Clayton Clayton. You guys were very thorough in how you interviewed me and what I wanted about Clayton. And through the process of the last 5 years of being in the Planning Commission, I've had a chance to review in detail the city's reports and feel free to comment on, question everything they've given us. Matter of fact, it's encouraged. And because we have such expertise on the Planning Commission right now, we actually can make modifications to the things that are actually put in front of us. And don't go along blindly with what's put in front of us by Mindy and her crew. And they appreciate it. And hopefully the people who are putting their application in front of us appreciate it. Bottom line is I appreciate what you do. It's hard work. Seeing what you see, doing the best you can, and there is no collusion. There is no backroom deals. You as a public need to understand these are public servants doing the best they can with the information they have in front of us. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Brian.
It's actually ironic that I'm speaking after the last speaker because the subject I want to talk about is censorship. Over the past 2 weeks, there's been a one-sided attack on free speech in this city. All of these so-called negative comments that the previous speaker just mentioned, a lot of them have poof gone away because people who apparently don't like the fact that Mr. Juan and me are running seem to have power because threads have been deleted on Nextdoor. People have been banned. I've had 5 of my supporters banned from Nextdoor from speaking. Interestingly enough, I was just informed that during my candidate speech, the live feed went down. But guess what? It came right back up when Mr. Shuey started speaking. But I'm sure that was a technical difficulty, right, Mr. Shuey? Look, what this comes down to, sir, is if you want to debate me on the issues, you want to challenge the issues, awesome. That's the way it's supposed to be. You don't get to stifle free speech. You don't get to stifle the other side. That's exactly the problem that's surfacing here. Something needs to be done about it. This isn't an old boys club to run. It shouldn't matter whether you've lived here 3 years or 3 months or 3 decades. Everybody should have a voice in this community. And it shouldn't be stifled by some club just because you happen to belong to an association or put a lot of volunteer hours or happen to have power over the AV feed. Censorship needs to be addressed. It's not right, and it needs to be corrected.
All right. Next, any other speakers for public comment here? All right, then we will close public comment. Well, you didn't. I thought you were for 8. You want to speak now?
Yeah, I'll speak now.
All right, then we'll have Jim Campbell.
On Prospector Place. Just to echo what Brian was saying, there's a lot more information that I know about that I'm not going to make public at the moment, but the wrong person isn't here at the moment to speak about that, so I will forego that at the moment, but it will be coming out soon. As you and Ms. Pierce have social media accounts, when you're speaking on Nextdoor, I see that you don't do that much more anymore, but you do, and you also have some of the Planning Commission people speaking. Now that a lot of us aren't able to speak, you've gotten very chatty all of a sudden, and now we can't speak or rebut or anything else for a limited time. It's interesting, it's right at this key time that goes on during this election when the only way that we have any way to speak about anything now is through this microphone. Yeah, smirk, go ahead, smirk. And also through a lawn sign, which is pretty neutering, I would say. So I just want this public record that there are things going on behind the scenes. This is not Clayton as we know it. It's more like Clayton Place. Okay, so I just want that as public record, and more will be coming.
All right, anyone else for public comment? Then we will close public comment. We will have no public hearings, so we will move on to item 8A, action item. Consider the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 483, amending Title 17, zoning of the Clayton Municipal Code to restrict and regulate parolee homes in the following general plan designations: multifamily low density, multifamily medium density, and multifamily high density, subject to conditional use permit. All right, Mindy?
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, the Vice Mayor and Council. Is this on? There we go. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. This item on the agenda is the consideration of a second reading and adoption of ordinance number 483, which would restrict and regulate parolee housing to sites only within the multifamily general plan designations, subject to a conditional use permit. The City Council first considered ordinance number 483 at its July 17th meeting, where the Council expanded the public noticing requirements to 500 feet to match the buffer distance between from sensitive uses. The Council also requested maps from staff showing a 750-foot and 1,000-foot buffer in order to better understand the specific details and the effects of a larger buffer distance. At its subsequent meeting on August 21st, the City Council voted to expand the buffer distance from sensitive uses to 1,000 feet, as well as increase the public notification distance to 1,000 feet and to place the notice within a local newspaper as well as on the city's website. These changes have made and are reflected in the ordinance, which is attached to the staff report. Due to some questions received from the public, staff would like to clarify the purpose and focus of the various maps that were previously presented to the City Council. Those maps are not part of the ordinance. but were drafted for legal purposes to determine if a de facto ban would exist if there were an expansion of the buffer distance from sensitive uses. There's been a great deal of conversation regarding the buffer distance. However, it is imperative to highlight the location of these sensitive uses are not static and will morph and change over time as businesses turn over and other sensitive uses such as licensed daycare and licensed group homes come into neighborhoods as well as leave neighborhoods. The maps focus on the largest concentration of these sensitive uses, which are located in the town center, and only reflect a snapshot in time and also did not drill down to specific properties. It's critical to note the implementation of the ordinance is fluid in that it would take all sensitive uses within 100 or 1,000 foot into consideration at the time that the application is received by the city. For example, staff received an inquiry regarding CVS if it would qualify as a sensitive use, and yes, it does because it does have off sale of alcohol on site, and its consideration still results in the 2 locations that were previously considered by the council. If the operator of a parolee home has found a possible location within Clayton, staff would apply the required buffer to that proposed location at that moment in time to determine if there are any sensitive uses within 1,000 feet of that proposed location to determine if that location satisfies the ordinance requirements. If additional sensitive uses move into an area that were not in existence at the time of adoption of the proposed ordinance, there could be a possibility the city is faced with a de facto ban and may have to consider future modifications to provide additional locations beyond the 2 viable locations in order to prevent a ban. Beyond the clarification that staff wanted to provide in regards to the maps as well as how the implementation of the ordinance, assuming adoption, would occur, staff has no further information to present tonight. Therefore, it's recommended the council motion to have a second reading by title and number only and waive further reading, and then motion to adopt ordinance number 483. And that concludes my staff report, and staff's available for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Nope, okay. Then we will open the public hearing and receive public comment. Again, this is an opportunity for members of the public to come speak before us and tell us their thoughts. This is not a time to ask staff questions. This is to direct your comments toward us, please. And if you would please keep it respectful and abide by the time. We can get through all of this, and we have plenty of speaker cards, and we will give you all an opportunity to speak. If you haven't filled out a card but you want to speak, please do so, and you can. I'll put you at the end. And we'll start with Brian.
Thank you. First of all, I want to commend you guys for finally expanding the buffer zone to 1,000 feet. I think I recommended that about 2 months ago. But you didn't do good. You didn't go far enough. As I've pointed out, under the proposed ordinance, you are leaving 2 areas, Keller Ridge and Shell Lane, completely unprotected. That is unacceptable. While I might not live in those areas, I have friends who live there. My kids have friends who live there. My kids play there. So as far as I'm concerned, those people are me. Those kids are my kids. And leaving them open to the possibility of not having the same regulations that will protect my home or some of the other homes in Clayton is unacceptable. How dare you let Keller Ridge and Shell Lane be the sacrificial lambs for you to check off the box saying, we're doing great, state, look at us. I understand the concerns of litigation and the costs of litigation. I'm a lawyer. It's what I do for a living. In fact, I've probably got more trial experience than every lawyer on this board. In fact, I know I do. Some things are just plain worth it. And the safety of our children and the safety of our citizens is one of those things. Here's the deal. If I'm wrong and my proposal is wrong, we get sued. If you're wrong and a parolee moves in and does something bad, somebody could die. Somebody could get raped. Somebody could get mugged. And I want to know which of you is going to be willing to talk to that mother or father of the son or daughter who may have gotten raped or robbed or killed and said, you know, we're really sorry, but on the plus side, we saved a lot of money and we didn't get sued. I'll tell you what, that's not a conversation I would ever have to make as a council person, because I would be voting no. This would not happen on my watch. Absolutely not. And it shouldn't happen under yours either. I commend Councilman Diaz at the last meeting for being the only voice to stand up and say, you know what, we don't have enough information and we need to explore other options. I hope he does the same thing, even knowing that it'll probably pass 3-1. The problem, and I understand the time problem, we got to do this before October 4th, but that's a self-created problem too. You've known about this for 2 years and you waited till the last minute to do it. Meanwhile, council members have gone on these important meetings to Orlando and all these other places. I don't think there's anything more important than the safety of Clayton. This needed to be priority number one. It shouldn't have been put to the end of the table and then rushed through. And now we're looking at haphazard planning and studies where, okay, 1,000 feet is defensible. No, it's not. There's a park here. Oh, no, there isn't. You guys got to get it right. Get it right the first time, because having to redo this over and over again is going to open up you to the exact same litigation that you fear. And denying things serially is going to do that too. Get it right. Protect Kell Ridge, protect Shell Lane, consider those parks.
Jeff Wan.
Hello again. I'm going to have to read fast because I only have 3 minutes. The council has mishandled the issue of parolee housing in at least 2 significant ways. The first is in its effort to avoid litigation. You have taken actions that weakens your position if there ever were actual litigation. The second way parolee housing has been mishandled by the council is your failure to perform sufficient due diligence. I'm going to comment on each of these 2 areas. Regarding litigation, it seems like the council's primary objective is to avoid litigation. But if you're concerned about litigation, the comments regarding your motivation provided at the last meeting were extremely unwise. The Supreme Court has repeatedly held that animus towards certain groups is an unconstitutional basis for making law. So while promoting the safety of the city would actually be a legitimate basis for lawmaking, comments including those from Councilmember Pierce, as quoted in the August 25th article in the East Bay Times, where she said she wants to make it as ugly a process as that can possibly be, and that she's going to count on everyone to raise holy hell to drive them out or not. It makes me wonder if Councilmember Pierce was provided guidance on how to properly craft law that avoids unconstitutional animus, because her comments here do not reflect that. As the Supreme Court stated in USDA versus Moreno, if the constitutional conception of equal protection of the laws means anything, it must at the very least mean that a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group cannot constitute a legitimate government interest. It would be wise for Councilmember Pierce to avoid the appearance of unconstitutional animus and focus on the legitimate interests of the city of Clayton in regulating parolee housing. Just saying. Regarding the lack of due diligence, the ordinance appears to have put the council in a conundrum. You have placed a de facto ban off the table, while at the same time narrowing the available parts of the city to 2 areas. But if there were a park or daycare or other sensitive use in those 2 areas, which the council is apparently ignorant of whether or not one exists, then those areas would be ruled out as well, and you'd be faced with the ban you're trying to avoid, all on the backs of those that live in the lower cost targeted areas filled with young families and retirees. It would behoove you to determine whether any of those sensitive use items actually exist so you can make more informed decisions. Specifically related to the level of diligence, I have a few questions that I'll just go through and you can address in your comments later. Can the council clarify why they did not address the matter of parolee housing in the 2 years before the moratorium was set to expire? Was external counsel engaged to consult in any capacity at any time? Given the city attorney considered any potential litigation a matter of first impression, on what basis did the attorney conclude first at the July 17 meeting that 500 feet was the most restrictive, then at the August 21 meeting conclude that 1,000 feet was the most restrictive buffer defensible? What's the rationale for excluding private parks from the type of sensitive uses while simultaneously including private schools? I didn't notice the Hesperia matter that Council Member Catalano raised at the August 21 meeting included in the original staff report. Was the city attorney aware of the Hesperia matter prior to Councilmember Catalano bringing it up? But here's the real conundrum. If you become aware of a sensitive use item existing in one or both of the targeted areas, would you then take steps to relax the ordinance, making it parolee housing easier to come to Clayton? Or would you expand the areas? Or maybe then would you be accepting of a ban? This scrambling around at the last minute could have been avoided if you had taken on this regulation at an earlier date, seek input from the residents, taken time to craft legislation that was actually defensible, and done your diligence properly. That's why I am a candidate for City Council.
All right, Richard Hale. And then after him, Ann Stanaway will be next.
Well, let's start off by saying that I'm no more convinced that this is the right direction than I was a couple of weeks ago when I harangued you, but I'm going to be a little bit softer spoken today. So, council folk, staff, please don't make the mistake of believing that the proposed ordinance provides any real permanent protection for us in Clayton. Remember, Clayton sits in California, where judges hold little respect for legislatures and even less for city councils. My sympathies to you for that. First, the city, I propose that the city discover what community means in the context of state law. California seems remarkably secretive on the matter. None of the, excuse me, I need my glasses. None of the state's parole laws require that prisoners be released into the community of their last legal address. Logically, the largest, least restrictive definition that satisfies this statute would be zip code, i.e. 94517. By stating community in the statute, the state presumes something smaller than the entire state. And as counties are not typically referenced in U.S. addresses, that leaves us with zip codes. On that basis, the county should follow state law and release into our community only parolees whose previous addresses were in our community, or zip code if you prefer. Second, Clayton's home occupation permit form in its second compliance assessment asks, will the home occupation be compatible with or not change the character of the adjacent residential areas? That's a tough one. While this is not exactly a home occupation question, the principle should be the same and the disruption to the neighborhood no more profound. Recognition of this fact should illuminate the conditional permit criteria. Towards minimizing the potential impact of group homes, I suggest the following. As the recently passed smoking ordinance bans smoking within multifamily housing dwelling units, and as neighbors may be loath to complain directly to a parolee, the owner-operator of any group home must be held legally responsible for compliance with the ordinance. Said compliance not being limited to mandatory installation of environmental monitoring devices. Use permits shall be revocable for cause after some reasonable number of violations within some defensible time span. I'll leave that to staff to figure out. Further, to obtain a permit or business license for a group home, the group home's sound transmission class and impact insulation class, as they impinge on adjacent units, must satisfy the state building codes and be confirmed by field test. At present, the SDC compliance figure is 45 dB, a figure barely acceptable in a normal residential situation. I propose the council pursue local code amendment, raising those figures to 65, a common industry standard for an upscale hotel room. Even if we do not or cannot affect local code amendments, field testing for state code compliance is crucial. The often substituted architectural estimates assume that all construction was done correctly and carefully. From my own experience as a resident and former president of the Chaparral Springs Owners Association, such construction quality is rare. Careless carpentry and substandard drywalling can and frequently do diminish those figures dramatically.
Okay, Mr. Hale, just like I cut off Abram. if
Okay,
you
but
could
you let
finish
him
up.
have the last paragraph, so I'm going to close.
That's what I was asking you
In
to do.
closing, Clayton is a quiet town, much quieter even than San Francisco's quietest neighborhoods in which I lived. Many sounds easily masked by the big city's background noise would be clearly audible and potentially disturbing here. So while a sound transmission class of 45 might be adequate for big cities, it is not for quiet towns like Clayton. Questions?
Thank you. Ann Stanaway, followed by Marianne Callahan. Ann Stanaway first.
Ann Stanaway, 1553 Haviland Place in Clayton. Thanks. As a connoisseur of irony, I had to remark on a few things at this meeting. It was incredible. The first thing we did was pledge allegiance to a flag and say, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, fine. Then we went on to hear about a proclamation declaring U.S. Constitution Week. And supposedly, we're a country under the rule of law. And that's how we maintain our civility here in this country. Okay, fine. Well, that brings me to my little soliloquy here. As I see it, we have two layers of bureaucracy standing between the citizens of Incorporated Clayton and any parolees granted residence within our community. An undermanned and ineffectual county, and a city hall that bases ordinance enforcement on political patronage. Result? Unfulfilled promises. And the winners in all this are the attorneys. The losers, the citizens. And what really struck me was this month is supposed to be suicide prevention awareness. Well, be aware of this. You may be presiding over a town that is committing suicide. Thank you.
Following Ms. Callahan will be Barbara Halperin.
Good evening, Council. I'm Marianne Callahan, and I'm also here to address you on the issue of parolee housing in Clayton. On the August 21st meeting, Councilmember Julie Pierce called on community members to show up at public notice meetings and, in her words, to raise holy hell. I am not here to raise holy hell, but to ask Council and community members to call upon their better angels and join me in speaking out against hate speech when you hear it. I understand that the City Council needs to consider the safety of its residents when making decisions. There is undoubtedly a need to identify sensitive use areas and to weigh the impacts of parolee housing carefully. But I object to painting all parolees with a broad brush as unwanted people who need to be driven out. I'm appalled at a staff report that asks that Clayton, as a, quote, affluent community, should investigate how to suppress parolee housing. I assure you that people in communities like Clayton can end up with a felony on their records. It happens in a lot of families, and it happened in mine. Thank goodness that after my family members paid their time, they were welcomed back into the community, and with the help of transitional housing, are now contributing and productive members of society. It's my understanding that such rehabilitation is the goal of our justice system, not public shaming and banishment. There is a place to lay shame, or if there is a place to lay shame, it is not on our fellow citizens who have made mistakes, paid their time, and are looking for a chance for redemption. But the shame belongs right here in these council chambers with people that allow fear and hate speech to make them cower and bend. I would recommend that you encourage fearful residents to visit similar homes in other communities and to meet the people living there. I think that you'll find that they're just people. Again, I call on you to open your hearts. Don't let fear make you small and mean. Don't put Clayton on the map for being the most restrictive community. The sort of language that I'm hearing around this issue should not be a point of pride. but it is an ugly and disgraceful display of fear and arrogance. I suggest that we use this issue for reflection of our shared values and to further consider how we can safely assist our brothers and sisters back into the fold.
Barbara Halperin, followed by Fred Fold.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Halperin. I live at 5118 Keller Ridge Drive in Clayton, and I am a 27-year resident of Clayton. And my comment is on the parolee housing issue. The recent discussions about parolee housing and allowing parolees to live in Clayton, not surprisingly, has stirred considerable controversy. In this day and age, it is natural and reasonable to want to feel safe and secure in our homes and neighborhoods. That is why we lock our doors and windows, have security systems, and sometimes neighborhood watch groups. But in reality, we are a community of families, friends, and neighbors, and we cannot lock out everyone and everything. So where should someone live who has paid their debt to society and has been thoroughly vetted? Does no one deserve a second chance? Is it better to shun and ostracize someone rather than provide a chance to move forward in a positive direction? If someone has made a mistake and served their punishment, must they be scorned and deprived of any sense of worth or dignity forever? When does the punishment end? There is someone in this room now whose son was incarcerated during a nonviolent Occupy protest in Oakland. After serving his sentence, he was accepted by Yale and is now in a master's degree program. What could a better outcome be than that? One of our most basic needs is a roof over our head. I found it incredibly disturbing for a council member to say, I want to make it as ugly as possible, as ugly a process as it could possibly be, so they go anywhere but Clayton. It was really, really painful to hear that. Locking someone out of a community leaves no room for anything else. No room for everything your churches and synagogues and other faith-based communities teach. Compassion and forgiveness and giving someone a second chance. I am always heartened and uplifted by the dozens of responses on the Nextdoor website when someone needs help with a pet. Can't we at the very least show the same humanity toward other human beings? Thank you.
All right, Fred Fold, followed by Dante Boo.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'm not here to make any complaints. I'm just here to make solutions. I was at last meeting and it sounded like the majority of the citizens of Clayton are against the government-funded parolee housing, not the parolees who already have ties to the community, already live here or have families here. But I came up with 3 possible solutions. They may not be viable, but I thought at least I owe it to all of you to present these ideas to you. They're really out of the box, but I'll present them to you. The first one is I think that the City Council should contact a surplus lines insurance company or Lloyd's of London and say, what would it cost to get a $1 million or $2 million policy to cover us in the event of any lawsuit relating to banning all government-funded parolee housing for, say, the next 5 years. It may be fairly inexpensive, $25,000, $50,000, something like that, which would work out to $10,000 a year, which is nothing. That's option 1. Option number 2, go ahead and set your 500 or 1,000 foot limit, but then create an application fee of for parolee housing of $50,000. Once it's approved, it's $250,000 per year to maintain it. In the event that the county is stupid enough to waste the taxpayers' money on this, under a worst case scenario, at least we would have the funds to hire 1 or 2 additional police officers, and we would get some sort of financial benefit out of this. Third option, which may be the cheapest, and as far as I know, I think it's legal. For the neighborhoods that are targeted, that do not have a homeowners association, they should establish a homeowners association and create a CC&R, a very simple one. It can just be one line that says, no government-sponsored or funded parolee housing is allowed. Thank you.
All right, after Dante is John Crancy.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor and members of the council. My name is Dante Blue. I'm with the Contra Costa County Office of Reentry and Justice. And so I first want to commend you on just your number of, your level of citizen engagement. It's definitely great to have your citizens come out and give you their voice and their thoughts and their feelings. And so this is in no way to undermine that, but to, one, try to make myself available for any questions that the council might have in regards to public safety realignment, the county's programs, or how any of these things operate. The second is also just to ensure that I can put some facts on the table for this entire body to consider. In reading some of the staff report, I think that there were a number of misrepresentations and things that weren't necessarily were construed in a light that I think is inconsistent with what we're trying to do in the county. As some of the speakers just before me spoke, the idea is about rehabilitation. And in fact, there's a recent Public Policy Institute report that showed that in terms of public safety realignment, Contra Costa County was the only county of those that it surveyed that actually reduced the level of individuals that were going back into custody with the programs that we run in every single measure, meaning all the different populations, because we're doing these type of programs. In terms of parolee housing, as it's called here, the first thing is that, parolee is a bit of a misnomer. The truth of the matter is that, you can think of this kind of as a pyramid, right? Where, parolees are kind of at the top and the smallest group, and then it goes down, felony probation down to misdemeanor probation. And the largest group that's affected by this is probably the people who have committed the lowest level type of crimes, which are going to be your individuals who are actually on, it's called court probation, or this is essentially when you don't have a probation officer to report to, and you could have driven on a suspended license or done a whole bunch of misdemeanors. But because of the way in which this is written, it's called parolee as the most, I think, visceral group of them all. But truthfully, it impacts anyone on supervision, which goes all the way down to those who might have just shoplifted, right? So 2 shoplifters couldn't live in the house because somehow that makes it more dangerous. And so I think there's real shortcomings with it. The question that we would ask is, what is the problem that we're trying to fix here? Because that's the way that we approach things in reentry. We say, what is the issue that we're trying to address, and what is the indicator that can show that we're actually moving the needle? How are we making things better? We want to look at something that's moving. If we see crime go up, then we say, hey, we got to try something else. And so the question I ask is, how do we know that this is going to work? 2 years from now, when you pass this legislation, how do you know that this was the right thing? What are you looking at? And there isn't anything to look at here, right? Which is part of what has happened in criminal justice over time, which is why reentry has come to the kind of forefront to say, we want evidence-based type practices. And I'll finish up. My apologies for going a bit long here. The other thing that I will say is that, does this really address your issues? When I was approached asking how housing works in terms of our programs, truthfully, we don't house anybody just in communities. All of our housings are tied to sober living environments. So they're all tied to somebody who is going through some type of treatment. In fact, the program that kind of started all this, Miss Shirley's, right, she's actually runs a therapeutic community. And it's very difficult to get inside that and to her program. In fact, in the last quarter, there were 13 referrals to her program. After being screened, only 3 people could qualify, because she wants to make sure that these are people who are ready and who are committed to the change that she's talking about. I say all this because when we talk about sober living housing, the truth of the matter is this legislation is not going to address any of that, because that's already in the state in the state law saying that this body can't even legislate in that arena if it's 6 people or less living in some type of therapeutic environment that's going towards substance use. And all the housing that we use
If you
is
could
towards
just
that.
wrap it up and
So-
kind of summarize, please.
So my point here is that, when you ask these questions on what are you trying to do, are you going to accomplish that? And when you look at the fact that all of this housing that we use, that I know that parole used, is actually related to sober living housing, you actually have not moved the needle at all. And so I think that a way to come together and think about, hey, how can we actually ensure that our community is more safe is a better way to go than trying to ban people and then never coming back and seeing if you actually accomplished what you were trying to accomplish. So again, I'm here if you have any questions about realignment, about AB 109, about our programs, about any of that. I'll be here throughout the entirety of this agenda item and to answer any of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. John Crancy and then Marcy Longchamps.
Good evening, Council, staff members. My name is John Crancy. I'm a resident of Clayton. I live on Coyote Circle. Let me start out by saying I am adamantly opposed to any type of parolee housing in Clayton. The question came up last meeting, and I'll bring it up again, and Jeff and Brian have both spoken to it about the park issue. What differentiates a private park from a public park? I don't think these parks or pocket parks, whatever you want to call them, were looked at. It would be the same thing. Private school, public school. What's the difference? I have 48 years in law enforcement, and I've never seen anything good come out of putting parolees in a private community like this. And I'm really upset that Keller Ridge area and Shell were singled out as the only place to put these people. We're there because that's what we could afford at the time. Young families, retired people, single people, and now we have to contend possibly with convicted felons coming in to our neighborhood. We have small children, babies. We have adolescents. I don't think this is a good area or a good ordinance. Again, I'm totally against any type of parolee housing within the city of Clayton. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marcy Longchamps, followed by Barbara Voigt.
Mr. Vice Mayor, City Council members, Mr. Napper, Ms. Gentry, and City Attorney. My name is Marcy Longchamps. I live on Coyote Circle. I have lived there for 26 years. I stand before you tonight against the wishes of my children, my family, and my friends. They have seen the deterioration of my physical and emotional health since the discussion of parolee housing first came before the city of Clayton. And despite being bullied and scapegoated and even suspended on Nextdoor for expressing my beliefs and opinions, I continue on. From the very beginning, I have stood firm that in my opinion, there should be no parolee housing anywhere in Clayton. And now that you have targeted my street, this fight has become very, very personal. Mr. Diaz spoke with me earlier today, and I want to thank him for keeping his promise and contacting me. Unfortunately, he did not have good news to tell me, and much of our conversation was him repeating the same thing that the council has shared time and time again, i.e., we have to have something in place before October 4th. Otherwise, parolees can come and live anywhere in Clayton, and we would never know. And we could be sued. Blame the state, not us. So now the city council boasts that we have a very restrictive ordinance in place. far as I know, for example, people like me, either through the mail or in a newspaper article, will be notified when someone has applied for an application to live on my street. And aren't I lucky? Because now I not only know, but I'm also going to be given a chance to speak at a public hearing about this application. Now, when I ask you, members of the council, have you ever listened to me or anyone else at a public meeting such as this one when it comes to opposing parolees living in Clayton? Mr. Diaz indicated that the Planning Commission would fight and make sure this would not go through, but you didn't listen to the Planning Commission when they did not recommend an ordinance to begin with, did you? So why would this supposed public hearing be any different? Your city attorney has said there has to be at least 2 parolee houses in Clayton. Then there is the issue of a private playground, like my playground, versus a public playground. Where does it say, city council members or Mr. Napper or Ms. Gentry, that there is even a distinction between private and public parks and playgrounds? Please show me where it says so. Are you making an assumption? Is not the safety of my children, my grandson, and all of the children who play at this park just as important as the children playing anywhere else in Clayton? I have lots more to say, but I'm out of time. So I'm going to conclude by saying this. Right now, there is a house for lease directly across the street from me. Convicted felons could be living there in 30 days under the ordinance, which you will pass, I know, tonight. Mr. Diaz says there hasn't been an application yet, but how does he or anyone else for that matter know that won't happen tomorrow? And I'm supposed to feel safe here and trust you to help keep me safe? I hope each and every one of you will sleep well tonight, comforted in the fact that convicted felons will never have to live next door to you here in Clayton. For me, it's just one more night of worry, more tears, and one more sleepless night.
Barbara Voigt, and then Joanne Liederman.
Hello, City Council. Thank you for letting me speak. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but then everything that I was going to say, pretty much everybody else said it. I live on Coyote Circle, and one of the things that really bothers me that everybody kind of hit on is about our community park right in Coyote Circle. Another thing that was said by Julie Pierce, that we should, if a landlord filled out an application, that we should go to the hearing and fight it. And I wanted to ask, are all of you going to be at the hearing? Are you going to fight it? Are we going to know when an application comes in? And then another thing, and I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, the 2 ladies that said about, we need to give people a chance. I agree with that. I think everybody should be given a chance. Do they live in a multifamily dwelling? I doubt it. They probably live in single houses within Clayton. And one of the things I don't understand, if we're going to do this, why isn't it for single family homes, for multifamily homes? Why is it just down to 2 small areas where we are like 2 feet away from each other's front door? If I was a parolee, I don't think I'd want to live there. I think I'd be very scrutinized. I think that I would really be watched in that small community. When I go to the swimming pool, am I going to sit with a parolee and it's uncertainty in life, and we don't want to be judgmental, but I think I would be very uncomfortable sitting at my community pool with somebody sitting with an electronic thing on there wherever they wear it. So, I could be wrong on that. I don't know. But I don't want it in my community. And another comment, I didn't know we were low-cost housing. Our condos go for almost $700,000. So that kind of offended me. And anyway, thank you for letting me talk. I know I did this off the cuff, but thank you so much.
All right, Joanne Lederman, followed by Galena Millman.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Lederman. I live on Keller Ridge Drive. I am a single-family homeowner. My neighbors to the west are the condo owners on Keller Ridge Drive. I agree that you need an ordinance. I know that public entities get themselves in trouble when they don't have a process in place that they can follow. My problem is with your ordinance. It probably is not going to be very popular with a lot of people, but if you're going to have one, it needs to be this entire community with buffers in place, appropriate buffers, not just everything you can think of. And that means all parks, public parks and private parks. Everybody's children matter. Now, assuming that you're probably going to go forward with this ordinance, which targets 2 small neighborhoods, I still need to consider what action I need to take to protect myself financially and to determine if you've done any damage to my property. But I will promise you this if it goes through. Number one, I will never vote for one of you for council again. I will work for people running against you. But I will not ever vote, and I have voted in the past for everybody here. Never again, not after you threw me and my neighbors under the bus. Number two, because I no longer feel like a full citizen of this community, any measure that comes before the community on the ballot, I will vote against. I don't care if it's for the benefit of Clayton. I'm no longer a full member of this community. I will vote no. And I will encourage my neighbors to do the same until we are full members. Of all the offensive things that I heard at the last meeting, Councilmember Pierce, it's already been stated to you that what you wanted was to make this as ugly and restrictive as possible, and then expect those of us who live in the neighborhood to come out and fight. You will not turn me into the ugly NIMBY. I am not going to fight against parolees coming back into a community. They have a right to do that, and I will not be the ugly person doing that. Okay? At the last meeting, along with some other people, I said you weren't getting very good legal advice. I was wrong. You got the legal advice you asked for, which was, how can we make this as restrictive as possible so that nobody comes here? And you got your answer. Throw 2 small communities under the bus. Make it dangerous potentially for them and leave everybody else safe. But what the lawyers don't tell you is what the right thing is to do. And here you sit under a banner that says, do the right thing. What you did was the wrong thing. It was the unfair thing. It was the discriminatory thing that you have done. You have made a certain group in this community not full citizens with full protection. You have people whose streets are not even patrolled by the police because they are private, and you have left them open to parolee housing, which is not particularly appropriate in small condos. So again, I'm going to say do the right thing, have an ordinance, but it needs to be this entire community with buffers that are appropriate. Thank you.
All right, Galena Millman, followed by Molly Mexaban.
Hi, guys. I'm kind of glad that today we have a representative from the state, and I just want to revisit one very important point that went a little bit unnoticed last time. The nature of Clayton, which is only 3.7 miles, is the fact that we are lacking any supportive, sufficient infrastructure that will help those people to recover. This gentleman was talking about the whole thing is based on recovery program. It could be drug recovery program, alcohol recovery program, psychological care for example, sexual offenders, and other supportive services. So I want to make it very clear, and I want everybody to hear that. Any parolee that is going to be living in Clayton, especially the fact if they cannot afford the car yet, is going to be stuck in 3.7 miles wondering what to do with his boring life, which may create actually extracurricular activities for those parolees. Another big confusion that occurred today is the fact we are talking about parolees that live in the families in their own homes with their relatives, and actual terminology of what parolee housing is. I'm a medical professional. I've been working on trauma team for years. And I have to tell you, the environment of parolee housing per se creates the group activities between people that been through the dark past, and sometimes because they are together and not involved with the healthy, normal environment, unfortunately things happen. In the city of Austin, they actually created 1,000 feet distance between parolee housing as a separate entity because those houses do unfortunately caught fire due to activities in those houses. And housing next to it also was affected by those fires. So when we're talking about 1,000 feet, it's not just because of our children, because environmentally those houses, because of the people that will be living there, are hazard in the sense of fire and other things. And I did major research about other cities and why people keep that distance. Also, I want to mention, due to the fact that only 11,000 people live in Clayton, if we have 100 parolees, just think about what I'm about to say. Almost every 10th citizen of our city is going to be a parolee. Just think about saturation. And you know what is surprising? When we're talking about parolee housing in big cities like San Jose, San Francisco, Concord, we keep forgetting those cities are not 3.7 miles. Having 2 parolee houses per 3.7 miles, it's unheard of. Thank you so much. I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory.
All right, Molly, followed by Cameron Holman.
Hi, my name is Molly McSaven. I live on Coyote Circle. This is my first town council meeting, and I read about this meeting on the way home from work today, so I'm sorry if my comments aren't as well prepared as I would have liked them to be. My husband and I moved here to Coyote Circle in Clayton about 2 years ago. This is our first home that we've ever owned. We both commute 3 hours round trip every day to be able to live here, which honestly is quite exhausting, but every day that we turn onto Oakhurst Drive, I'm just so happy to be coming back to the city. When we first looked at the place that we bought, it was our first time to Clayton. We literally had a 5-minute tour of the downtown, and I loved it so much, and I really wanted to live here. We love that it's a small town feel. We felt it would be a really safe place to raise a family, and now we have our first baby on the way due in December, and if I wince, it's because the baby keeps kicking, so I apologize for that. I've been trying to follow this debate online. I'm not really a political person, but I've been reading about it on Nextdoor, and I'm extremely concerned and upset that the proposal being voted on today not only doesn't protect our area, but seems like it will basically consolidate or concentrate it to our neighborhood and the Shell Ridge area, Shell Lane. I really love walking around our neighborhood. I've been looking forward to walking the baby around the neighborhood and later to bringing the baby when he or she is a little bit older up to our community park, which I understand is not being considered a sensitive area as the other parks in the city are. But now I worry whether I'm going to be safe to be doing that and whether my children will be safe to be playing in that park. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Cameron, followed by Jim Gamble.
Members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Cameron Holman. I actually live on Coyote Circle as well. So I live in the Keller Ridge neighborhood there on Coyote Circle. I've lived there about a year and a half with my wife, who's actually previously spoke on this issue. I actually moved out here from a small town, Central Illinois, of approximately 4,000 people. So I chose Clayton because of that item. Small town, country feel, everybody knows each other, everybody is family friends, and everybody knows each other. We have the small town 4th of July parade, we have the derbies, we have the car shows, where everybody is a member of the community and a member of everyone knows each other. Oktoberfest, it all goes hand in hand with what we have here. So I do oppose the parolee housing on a couple different items. I commute an hour and a half each way, and of course that's a bear coming from a small town. I didn't move to Clayton for the convenience. I moved here from for the small town feel, for where I'm known as more than a number. I'm a person. I'm a individual who wants to be here, who pays to be here. This was our first property as well, was in Clayton. We moved here outside of Walnut Creek because we wanted to be here. We wanted that small town feel. Now, I started my career, I'm actually working in environmental health. So I ask that you take a couple different considerations on the idea of sensitive areas as well as what are considered parks. A couple different items, AB 617. Keep that in mind as far as what's coming down the line from California EPA and their quality management districts. California Department of Public Health also has quite a variety of subjects on sensitive areas, as well as Title VIII CCR, California OSHA code. Keep in mind, that's exactly what I do. I'm more than happy to connect you with those connections with your local CUPAs, as well as with Contra Costa. I ask that you reconsider all the ordinance that you have and define out what you consider to be parks. Define out what you consider to be sensitive areas. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, last speaker card is Jim Gamble. If there's anybody else, please make sure and fill out a card. All right. Hang on one second, Jim.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm up here again just because I saw Marcy up here and she just about made me cry. But I've known her just since this Fulcrum debacle, and then we've got the parolee housing that came up. It seems that, like Ms. Pierce was saying, that she wants people to raise holy hell, and that's what people are doing. They're trying to do. But these things aren't being listened to. I appreciate Mr. Diaz for his vote last time and at least showing a little bit of concern about the distance. You guys wouldn't have made that 1,000 feet, would you, if we hadn't raised holy hell? So why don't we make it a little bit bigger so we can protect all of our citizens instead of just kind of dangling that little lamb out there. I'm sure that there's success stories that you're aware of, but guess what? This isn't a town that we try those things in and then hope they work, because Most of the time they don't work, as we've seen the recidivism rate on parolees and how many times they're reincarcerated. I have seen many cops come up here and talk about the mess when they go into a parolee house. Everybody's mail's on the floor. There's stolen items everywhere. Some of them are turned into brothels in the back. I mean, what are we doing? Thank you.
Frank, the video.
Good evening, Council. Frank Video, 104 Gold Rush Court. I've already spoken quite a bit about lots of things so far this year. I'll just be brief. The success stories that the gentleman here mentioned and the family behind us, hey, I really feel for you. There are cases where, some people deserve a second chance, but here are some of the crimes that are eligible under AB 109 that could come back to us. Meth, PCP use, brandishing a firearm while in a vehicle, grand theft of various kinds, cruelty to an animal. Threats against witnesses, removal of an officer's firearm while resisting arrest. This is just part of the list. It's from AB 109, the legislation that we're supposed to fear that the ACLU is going to take us out on. We don't need this kind of stuff here. I'm sorry. This is, there's people who come here to raise their children. We just don't want this here. Okay? So I do understand, give a second chance, but we can't have this kind of stuff here. There's one other thing, mathematics, that I think that the council should be aware of. In particular, those who are so down on social media. I've actually read the website of one of the candidates. He's not too hot on social media either. There are over 800 members on Nextdoor of Keller Ridge. One of the vocal minorities, Councilmember Shuey, that, hey, they want to be heard. 800 members. I don't think they'll be getting your vote. Thank you.
All right, and then we have Jackie Hardy.
Hardy, yes. Hi, I'm Jackie Hardy. I live on Shell Lane, so apparently I am the lamb. Nice to meet you. Honestly, I hadn't planned on talking tonight because I have two very little children, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old who just started at Mount Diablo. And I have to walk him to school because he's an early friend tomorrow morning, which requires dragging him out of bed and dragging him through that tunnel, which was making me crazy nervous last week because we had that wonderful man in town who was hanging out at the bottom of by the creek. You guys may have heard about the homeless guy. Really nervous type of thing because I walk the kids by myself every morning. I also walk everywhere in town. Some of you may recognize me if you spend time in town because we bought our house on Shell Lane specifically because I was 7 months pregnant and I wanted to walk into town and go to the park and have the kids socialize that way. So I spend at least an hour a day or 2 hours a day just wandering around downtown playing Pokemon Go with my son because it's his exercise and he loves it. And you can get a 5-year-old to not complain once on a 2-hour walk when you have Pokemon Go, which, oh my God, you have no idea how wonderful that is. But I walked here tonight because Clayton's safe. Clayton is super safe. But I'm a little concerned that if you put parolee housing in my area, that it won't be super safe. I'm also a little concerned because we had felons in the family. My husband's uncle was a parolee, and he was staying with his grandmother, and he's been since kicked out of the house because it hasn't worked out multiple times. And we have alcoholics on my side of the family that have also had issues. We're all from Illinois, where, yay, that's where bad people live, I guess. So we came out here, and it's not looking like it's going to be much better. My first week here in Clayton, while I loved it, my mail was stolen. And my checks were stolen, and I had to cancel out my bank account and everything because I was told the only problem in Clayton is mail theft. And we just got mailboxes that lock, but it's not like that's actually going to stop anyone because I don't like the little key, so I just put my hand in there and pull it out. Not that big of an arm. So I'm a little concerned here. Also, because I walked here tonight, it's safe to walk now, but is it going to be safe in a month to walk to the library and walk back home at night? Is that something you guys are going to be able to help me with? Are you going to walk home with me tonight? Because that could be fun. Also, if money is really the thing that we're all concerned about here, my house value is probably going to drop really soon. There's 4 houses on the market just this past week. This is not the time to sell your house. Everybody knows that. How many more are coming? 4, 5? When I was at the pool, everybody's talking about selling and getting out, and that's not going to be great for my house value. On top of that, the real estate agent I talked to on the way over here today said we have to put in our disclosures if we do sell our house that we're zoned for parolee housing, which is also going to be a nice hit to our property value. So, woohoo, bought a house 2 years ago and now maybe not my best move. But really, I just wanted to come out here tonight and tell you guys that I have the cutest kids who are everywhere and literally run me down on a daily basis as a stay-at-home mom. But I just want them to be safe, and I'm sure you guys want your kids to be safe. So if we're going to have parolee housing in Clayton, it should be everywhere. Let anybody have the same risk that we're going to have. Let everybody's property values drop the same amount. Don't single us out, because we have a lot of little kids in my area, a lot of seniors, widows, people that aren't really built to deal with problems except for puttering around and chasing gardeners and telling them that there's too many leaves on the ground, because we have one of those who's on our HOA who literally follows the gardeners around. So aside from that, please think about it before you vote today. If you're going to do these parolees, let them be everywhere. Be fair to everyone in Clayton and treat us all equally. Don't single us out because we wanted to live near downtown where we could walk and see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else that has not filled out a card? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing and bring it back up here for council discussion. Anybody have any? All right, Julie.
I'm just going to, excuse me, say a couple of things first and then maybe have something else to say later. I want to apologize to everyone in this room and everyone in this community for my poor choice of words, my lack of decorum at the last meeting. It was a very long meeting, as you all know. I had a family member in the hospital at great risk, and I was on my last nerve. So yes, the comments got to me. Yes, I was angry. Yes, I was upset. I said some things I regret. But I don't regret letting you all know that I don't think it's appropriate for us to have parolee housing in Clayton if we can find a way to avoid it. I agree with many of you about the risks. I also feel very, very strongly, and I'm glad a member of the county is here. I think the county has passed the buck because the state passed the buck onto the county. But the county's plan, as far as I understand, is not even complete yet. We don't really know what we're going to get. If that's in error, then I hope the county will correct us. But I think it's been really unfortunate the way that this has been done. You say we haven't reached out to the community. The county hasn't reached out to us very well either. And we're trying to be protective. When this bill was passed, it was made really clear in the legislation that we had the opportunity to have 2 one-year moratoriums while we got an ordinance together. And frankly, we used those 2 one-year moratoriums, but that's a max. We can't do it again. And so we're trying, in the absence of very strong guidance from our county, to figure out how best to protect Clayton. And we were told by the applicant that talked to us 2 years ago that they wanted to go someplace where there was not a use permit application process. They did not want to be daylighted. So what I said last meeting was a very inarticulate way of saying we're trying to put together a process that will make sure that it's a public, daylighted process. If that's not what these folks want when they establish those homes, then they can find one of the communities that has no regulation whatsoever. And trust me, there are several in this county that have no regulation, not even a definition for what these homes would be. We're trying to look out for the community. We're not trying to single out certain neighborhoods. We are writing this as narrowly as we possibly can to put these in areas that we would be considered the least advantageous to those folks wanting to come to Clayton. Yes, everybody needs a second chance if they've earned it. I think the county could have done something far more creative. I think they still should do something more creative. The county chose not to build another jail. They chose to go to early release programs and inflict these folks who were maybe not ready to leave onto the local communities. Yes, there are success stories. There are a whole lot more that are not. I feel very strongly we need to do the best we can to protect our citizens, and we're trying to do that. Is it perfect? No. But if we can get something passed tonight, it can be in place before the moratorium ends. And then we will have at least protected ourselves the best we can. Can we come back and amend it to make it stronger or amend it to make it better? Yes, we can. But at least this gets us down the road. And I will address those, why haven't we done this in the last 2 years? We were waiting on the county to make up their mind. We're doing the best we can to defend ourselves. It's from the state, it's from the county, and we get dumped on. We don't have the resources to fight a big lawsuit. And if what I said at the last meeting put us in worse shape for that, I am sincerely sorry. But I don't think it did. What we're talking about doing is making something that is technically possible, but maybe not very palatable. And that's the whole point. I may have other comments later.
All right, Jim.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank everybody for their input. That they've given me at least some more things to think about. And as Julie just mentioned, we unfortunately have come to the end of the line on this. However, to continue my support for this ordinance number 483, I'm going to request my fellow council members that and the staff that we readdress this issue once we get it on the books, because once it's on the books, then yes, we can take a look at some other alternatives. Unfortunately, we've run out of time on that, and that's a fact of life. So we have to do something in order so that we will not be at risk of having willy-nilly activity taking place in here in our town. I understand the issue and recognize, because I have reached out to the community on this, the fact that we only have potentially, and yes, it's a potential, but it's also a reality, 2 areas within the city that could potentially have someone apply for parolee housing. I personally believe that won't happen. This community wouldn't stand for it. I mean, look what you've done in the past 2 or 3 meetings. You've come out here and spoken to us very vocally about this. And I suspect that any person that would want to try and bring in such a group home or whatever, they would find such resistance that it would be unlikely that they would ultimately make the decision to pursue it. And I thought there were some great ideas, particularly with the fees associated with that. The buffer, as I spoke before, I would like to extend it, but if we did that, the clock would start over again, and then we would run out of time. The moratorium would be met and done, and then whatever we couldn't get anything that would be into an ordinance that would effectively at least start the process of providing some sort of guidance and some appropriate levels of scrutiny before anything could happen. If we didn't get that on the books, I assure you that somebody is sitting out there waiting to say, good, they have done nothing and there is nothing on the books. We can come in there under the slip of darkness and not see anything, and it'll happen. We have to get something done. We have to revisit, and that's how I'm going to be supportive of this, is I want us to take a look at the issue of these private parks, even if they're small. And I've been up there several times just to scout out that area. We need to make sure that that is addressed on a future revision of this ordinance. Regarding not seeing the police department up there, I find that hard to believe, only because I know that they're out there patrolling around the area. And in fact, we get reports on a weekly basis. And what we don't let, I think, everybody know is, you would be surprised at the number of bad characters they stop at the entrance to our cities. We have a camera system throughout the city that catches the license plate of everybody that's coming in and out of the city. And you would be surprised at the number of people that have been stopped, investigated, and taken into custody before they even can come into the city after they break our threshold. You have to realize that we have extremely vigilant police officers that are looking out for your and all this community's safety. It happens every day. We see it. Maybe we need to communicate that so you know that the police are out there actively enforcing the laws and keeping these individuals out. So, again, I want to thank all of the input that we got tonight, but to get my support for this ordinance, I want the commitment of this council, one, to readdress the 1,000-foot barrier and see if there's some way we can extend it, but we can't do it tonight. We have to get this on the books. Secondly, I want to look at the potential of inclusion of these private or whatever size park that exist. And I've been up there, and I know this is a small park, excuse me, but yet it is always the potential of having something unfavorable happen up there. So we are going to, I'm going to request and demand as best I can that we look specifically at those two issues when we revisit this after this ordinance is put into place in order to gain my support. Taking a look at expanding that 1,000-foot buffer and looking at specifically the private park. Thank you.
To you.
A couple points. So all of our, or most of our neighboring cities have regulated this. We've gone through now over a couple hearings the different examples of what our neighboring cities have done. None of them have created a ban or de facto ban. And I personally believe that we're capable of doing what our neighboring cities are doing, which is to regulate this in a reasonable manner. I'm not in favor of a ban or a de facto ban, not today and not in the future. So just like I said on July 17th and August 21, I'm in favor of a regulation that's legally defensible. I want to address a couple other comments that I heard today, including one that was mentioned by Mr. Budell. One of the things you talk about is litigation as if the primary concern is cost. Yes, I think a cost is concern in a city of our size, given our budget, but it is not the only concern. So before sort of any of us get too happy over a campaign slogan, I really would want to examine the potential outcomes of a litigation. I'm not a litigator, but I'm a land use attorney, and the only way I would choose to litigate something if I thought that there was a win-win outcome there. And I would submit that respectfully, by advocating for a ban or de facto ban, I think you're working against your own interest. And we've gone through this already. If we lose on a legal challenge, our ordinance gets struck down. That's exactly what happened with the city of Hesperia. They had two different ordinances. One was a ban, one was a regulation enforcing that ban. Within 2 months after a lawsuit was filed against them, a court issued a preliminary injunction that prohibited the city from enforcing their ordinance. At that point, they no longer were allowed to even enforce that ordinance. So if we lose not only money, but I think we lose the ability to enforce or, whatever regulations we have in place. That's not a desirable outcome. If we win, so if by some reason a court is going to uphold our ordinance and say, yes, go ahead, Clayton, ban all parallel housing, will allow you to do that. The state is not going to sit idle and let every other city in California follow that precedent and create their own ban. Because at the end of that road, if every city did that and followed that precedent, there'd be no place for parallel housing in the state of California. The state's not going to let us do that. So excuse me, I'm talking now. Excuse me.
Jim, please, we gave you an opportunity.
So from my perspective, the litigation aspect is an absolute lose-lose situation. I don't think there's a win scenario in that. For me, like I said, I'm not in favor of a ban or de facto ban. Not today, not in the future for that reason. There's no win-win in that outcome. I also want to point out that we absolutely do not live in a vacuum. There was an East Bay Times article that got written a week and a half ago. So if any of you saw the comments that some people outside of Clayton posted there, that already gives some indication as to how others would view what we were to do. But I do want to mention one other thing that, we absolutely don't live in a vacuum. And, so today about 4 o'clock, I think this was addressed to all council members and the city attorney and city staff. We received a letter. This was a letter from the California Renters Legal Advocacy and Education Fund. I've never heard of this group, but they wrote us a letter. Essentially, and here's what it says, and I'll just read a couple excerpts from here. But this letter is to inform the city of Clayton that they have an obligation to abide by all relevant state and federal laws when evaluating the proposal to restrict and regulate parallel homes, including the Fair Housing Act, the 8th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Ordinance 483, in their opinion, is a blatant attempt at outright banning parallels from the city of Clayton. And it goes on and, talks about, how they view our ordinance. So I think we are already being watched, and so that's a concern definitely for me. But what I'm voting today in favor of is an ordinance that is not a ban or a de facto ban, and I'm not interested in pushing it any further to make it a de facto ban. So that's where my vote is. I want to do something that's legally defensible and is regulation. So that's where I'm at.
All right. I have a lot of the same thoughts as Tuya, so I'm not going to belabor them. I made it very clear last time that I am a litigator and I do try cases, and I totally agree, though, that it's a lose-lose. Even if we won, after spending a lot of money, the state would change the rules and they would remove our right to do anything. What we're doing is we are making the best of a bad situation. We are doing reasonable legislation to permit and make sure that we can put as much notice and ability to control the environment is there. We are giving 2 opportunity sites, and I get it that those of you in those opportunity sites it's personal for you. I get that. But we have looked, staff has looked. If you open it to other areas, you're expanding the opportunity sites. You have the opportunity for more parole housing. What we are doing is taking a mandate from the state that's funneling through the county, which still hasn't quite figured out everything they're going to do, and we are trying to regulate it and provide you, the citizens, which I'm a citizen, I walk all over the place, and yes, I'll be walking by you. I walk by your house. Yes, it's not in my backyard, but it's there. We're putting the best face we can on it with reasonable regulation and permitting so that you will know. And one of the speakers came up here and said it's probably not a great location for them because they're going to be watched. That's the point. If we go through a permit process, then we will know and we can be vigilant. You can be vigilant. I can be vigilant. Our police will know. They will be vigilant. It is not a perfect solution. There is no perfect solution. One of the things that I hope some of you out there in the audience recognize, those of you that are watching at home, we had people on the other side of this argument tonight. Okay? And I do applaud you for those of you that are very against this. You were respectful of them, and I appreciate that. But the point is there are two sides to every story. And we're listening to both sides, and we're making the best decision that we feel is there for the city to minimize the safety risks, to follow the law, and reasonably regulate what is a situation we don't want to have. Okay? So I get your anger and your vitriol. I don't, the conspiracy theories, go ahead, but what we have done up here and what we will continue to do is we will do what we feel is best after looking at both sides and looking at everything. And you're not the only ones that have come and spoken to us. I had several people come up to me at the Music in the Park. I've had people come up to me at Safeway. I've had people email me. I've had people call me. So yes, you're the vocal group. You're the loud group here, and we hear you. Okay, and I can't please everybody all the time. I can only do what you elected me to do, and that is do the best I can for the city as a whole. And I think that this is the best regulation to do that. Jim, I don't have, and Julie mentioned it too, I don't think there's anything that's going to prevent us from revisiting this. If we get another letter from a group that says it's a de facto ban or anything like that, we may have to look at it from that standpoint. We can look at it from the standpoint of whether or not we need to include other things. But we've got to get it on, the books now. And I think staff has done a very good job at doing the best that they can to reasonably regulate a poor situation. So I'm going to vote for this, and I understand that I've lost a few votes out there. But if I went by that every time, because pretty much every decision that involves somebody's backyard, we irritate somebody. And my job isn't to make sure that I get each of your votes. My job is to do what you elected, or those that elected me last time are there. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to re-elect me, that's fine, and the city will speak, okay? But I'm not going to be beholden to anybody that threatens that I'm going to withhold my vote from you if you don't do what you want. I'm going to do what I feel is best for the city as a whole, and I think we've done that and are going to do that tonight, I think. So, Julie, do you want to add anything else?
I did just want to make a couple of comments because you and Tuya both stated this very well, and I hear Jim's concerns about looking at it again after we get this on the books. We'll have to evaluate that as we go forward. But I do want to remind everyone that the property owner has to sign off on the use permit. And I think that would be something that if someone were to approach me about using my property for this use, I would have to think long and hard about whether I would be willing to allow that. And as far as hearing from the community, many of us are out and about all the time and hear from the community. I wrote a letter while I was on my vacation in early August to about 500 of my constituents that I have emails for. And I heard back from well over 100 of them agreeing with the position to regulate carefully, but not to ban. And overwhelmingly, many of them said we would prefer to have a ban, but we understand that that's not really the wisest way to go. So while I did have others, a handful, less than 10 of the folks who responded said, hell or high water, just ban them. The overwhelming majority said, carefully regulate, do everything you can to protect us, and we'll trust you to do the right thing. I'm trying to do that.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to have the city clerk read ordinance number 483 by title and number only and waive further reading.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Ordinance number 483
483, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Clayton adopting amendments to Clayton Municipal Code Title 17, zoning in order to restrict and regulate parolee homes in the following general plan.
Your mic's not on.
Oh, let me start again. Ordinance number 483.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Clayton adopting amendments to Clayton Municipal Code Title 17, zoning in order to restrict and regulate parolee homes in the following general plan designations: multifamily low density, multifamily medium density, and multifamily high density, subject to a conditional use permit.
And then I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 483 with the finding that the adoption of this ordinance is not subject to CEQA, because CEQA only applies to projects which have the potential for causing a significant effect on the environment, and this activity is not considered to be a project and can be with certainty that it will not have a significant or physical change to the environment.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
I'm not opposed, but I want to make sure that somewhere on the record here that we revisit this, because there's more information that we need to have, and we can't get it done before we vote on this and get this on the books. So I don't want to stall that, but I want to make sure we have a commitment to do that.
I would just say, Jim, if you find additional information, we're always open to adding things to the agenda. And I mean, I don't want to commit to a timeline because I don't know when that might be.
Right, and I'm not asking for a timeline. What I'm asking for is to make sure the city staff hears that loud and clear. That's,
Hey, well,
and that
the council provides direction to the staff.
I know that.
So
I
you've
know
made
that.
it very clear.
I understand the process.
I think we've understood that this is something that we can revisit down the road. And you can bring that up, or anybody can bring that up at a council meeting, and we can put it on a future agenda. Okay. So did you vote yes?
Yes.
Okay. So it's unanimous, 4-0. All right. Move on to council items for future meetings. Is there any agenda items that people wish to put on a future agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll close council items. We have no closed session, so we will adjourn our meeting for tonight. Thank you for those who attended.